Welcome back, everybody. Last week, we spent the majority of our time talking about sort of common literary devices and crafting thematic statements. So this week, we're going to start applying that knowledge. Really, as we move through our short story unit, literary devices and being able to craft thematic statements are going to be at the bedrock of all of our analysis and discussion. This week, we're going to read a short story called The Lottery. And as we read The Lottery, I want you to focus on three of these devices that we talked about last week. So let's take a look at what we have here. Devices I want you really to dial into today as you read through The Lottery. The first one is foreshadowing, right? And remember, foreshadow is an advanced hint of what's to come later in the story, often portrayed through imagery or symbolism. So you're looking for some sort of detail that kind of gives away the ending before you get there. Now, a lot of times you won't even know foreshadowing is happening until perhaps later in the story or sometimes the very end. So what we'll be doing is we'll be reading, you'll be thinking about that as you're reading details that might serve as foreshadowing. But again, those will really reveal themselves at the conclusion of the text. The second skill I'm going to have you focus on is looking at setting. Now, I know setting sounds really simple. We say, oh, that's the time and the place. Boom, I'm done. However, I want you to be sure to consider the impact that setting has on the characters, their motivations, how they behave, how they act. For example, something that were to happen in New York City is going to be taken and experienced differently than if it happens in Alabama. Same thing with you. The way you speak, the way you converse depends on your setting. How you act at school, most of you at least, is probably different from how you act at home, which is different from how you act when you're hanging out with your friends. So when we're reading this, we want to talk about and we want to think about how setting is affecting our characters, their motivations and their actions, and sort of the way they think and the way they move throughout the story. The third point I want you to focus on is imagery. As you're reading The Lottery, we're going to be looking for examples of imagery and talk about the effects that those have on the reader. Remember, imagery is that language that appeals to the five senses, usually has a metaphor or simile or symbol or something to kind of enhance that level of comparison. So one of the assignments I'm going to have you do with this particular task is to create some imagery of your own, right? Get in the habit of building and creating. So when you look at this, I have some examples here. We say when you're writing, you want to avoid cliche. If you don't know what cliche is, means it's kind of the obvious thing that everybody says, and it doesn't really offer any new insight or anything. So we want you to try to be original when you're creating imagery. So here's a sample, right? I have some starters over here, starter sentences. Then in the middle, I put what would be a cliche for that image. Over here, I want you to try and develop your own. So for example, something was as white as snow. I've only heard that 37,000 times in my life. Or it was as soft as a pillow, or as soft as a baby's bottom, right? These are things I want you to avoid. So in this box over here, what I want you to do is come up with your own original image. So for example, instead of saying it was as white as snow, I said it was as white as the buzzing fluorescent lights in the doctor's office. And that gives me a completely different image than snow, right? Both are white, but that sort of buzzing fluorescent light that you see when you're waiting in the doctor's office, it kind of conjures up different feelings than does snow. Same thing as soft as a pillow. Instead, I chose to say as soft as someone's hands who had never worked or never seen a hard day's work. So that's another example of the image that I create is far different than the cliche. So on the document that you see attached to this assignment, you'll go ahead and fill in your three there. As hard as blank, as good as blank, and as sweet as blank. Then at the bottom part of that page, what I'm going to have you do is take a single feeling and try to create an image or a metaphor for it for all five of the senses, right? So anger is what I did for my example. And I said anger is the taste of rusty nails in your throat. Anger is anger is feeling your teeth grind like gunpowder. Right? That idea there, I'm trying to conjure up a specific sense, a specific feel of like, imagine your teeth grinding like gunpowder, like they're ready to explode. Anger has the smell of blood and gasoline. I don't even know if that's true. I just think that sounds cool, so that's why I said it. Anger is the sound of the ocean's waves crashing on the rocks. And I said that because when I one time when I went to the ocean and the waves kept hitting the rocks, it was loud and it just kind of created this all-encompassing sound. It was just like a the whole time. So when I'm angry, I know that's what I feel, just sort of like this sound in my head. And my last one was anger is seeing your dreams always within sight, but never within reach. So again, that's appealing to this sort of sense of sight, but also tying in a metaphor there. So that's my example. The box I'd like you to complete is here, and I want you to try it with jealousy, something we've all felt at one point in our lives, being jealous. So what you'll do is you'll type in these boxes, jealousy is the taste of what? It's feeling what? It has the smell of what? It's the sound or seeing what? So that's the assignment for this. You review those key literary terms, and especially with imagery, we start to work on crafting some of our own. All right, thanks.